Kathy, one of the things that people want to know is what's so valuable? Why should I pick up this journal? Why should I listen to you? So, what is so valuable about this amazing new journal, which is, by the way, it's for an entire year, right? It's not 3 months and drop or 6 months and drop because it's a continuous process, right? So, what do you find, Kathy? What's most valuable as far as you see it?
Sure. So I'm going to focus first on leaders of leaders because I think that I know that's our primary target market. And I really want to speak to what I think is going to make a huge difference for them. Barbara just spoke about coming from the heart. Leaders of leaders need to lead with the heart. What does that mean? Well, first of all, you need to understand your own intentions behind your leadership. So really taking a look at and going in depth with what are my values? What values do I bring to my leadership? And then the next step, share them. You really need to engage with leaders of leaders and teams and share your stories. It makes you more personable and more human. It also brings to them the awareness that you're going through the same struggles that they are. And granted, it's different. At every level, there are different levels of stress and different things that you're focusing on and different deliverables and all of that. We don't want you to think that that's not a huge focus of us. We get it. We've been there. But it also comes with huge intentionality. In order to make change, you have to, first of all, acknowledge what change you want to make, and then you have to share and be that change. And that's hard. It's hard at any time, but especially now, to be vulnerable and to come out to your teams and say, hey, I'm struggling with the same thing you are. My 17-year-old just drove off in a car and I don't know where they're going or if they have masks or, and that makes you more human. And it makes you more approachable. And it also opens the door for them to say, I'm really struggling too. And then we can provide you with some tools to help you with those struggles, both personally, professionally, in many areas and many aspects of your life. So what would you like to focus on, Barbara?
Well, first of all, I want to tag on what you said. This is for leaders, but this crosses the lines of personal and professional. I mean, if you are truly developing and focusing on things like boundaries and life and finding your right path, it's not just work and it's not just home. It's a constant blend, and that's what we're balancing all the time. But I will say one of the things that I really appreciate about this journal are the thought-provoking questions. So not only do we ask really deep, thoughtful questions, but we follow it with ways that you can make the change. Like we ask you questions, so what are you going to do? Now we ask it in a more process focus, but it's not just coming up with what it is, but how are you going to solve the gap? How are you going to get from A to B? So I think that's one thing that I really do appreciate. And I really like the fact that we have embedded in the journal an opportunity, which I find it very important for me running a business, is to say, look, did I complete what I was going to complete yesterday? And what is my intention for today? Because if I don't do those two things, I am not clear that I am working on the right thing today, right? Because an email will come in or a phone call. I mean, you can be pulled in a million different directions these days. Even though you're at home, everything's happening around you. So I think what I really like is the very structured approach. From my experience, leaders like a little more structure, right? They don't want to be handheld, but they like the structure. So we provide the questions, the space, the activities to guide through. The other thing I like is we do talk about boundaries. And if I hear one more, conversation about boundaries, it's so important. We have lost boundaries, and that has lost a lot of joy and productivity, right? So it's not just about life, it's about productivity and why people think they're getting through the day and they're really busy, but not getting the important things done because you don't have the boundaries, right? So I'm working with someone who has 3 pages of things to do that they accumulate and add to. And from a boundary perspective, the question is, what is your prioritization? What is most important to you? Like, what is most important for you to do in your job? Well, I could take off half these things. Then take half the things off, because you're causing yourself more stress by not paying attention to these things that are all on the list that you're not going to get to anyways. And if you can't delegate them, get rid of them and see what happens. Right. So I think those are the things that we bring to light to say, look, what are you doing today that is allowing you to move forward, to emerge from this experience healthier, happier, and more productive versus staying within the experience and trying to just survive. So those are some of the things I really appreciate about the work that we have done and put into this journal.
Mhm, for sure. I'm going to spin off on your healthier comment. We also
You
have
should.
some we also have some areas in this journal
Yeah.
that again, personal and professional, they kind of they complement. I'm not going
Yep.
to say but they complement each other. And so, as such, we felt them critically important to include in the journal.
Yep.
Things such as nutrition, sleep,
Yep.
and many aspects of wellness. Now, we're not here to tell you how to eat. That's not what this is about at all.
Yeah.
But what we do want to focus you on is what are your decisions that you've made about how you fuel your body to be most effective and efficient, such that you can show up and perform at high performance levels. So that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
And then are you in integrity with those decisions and choices? So it's
Yeah.
let's take a look at what decisions you've made about how to fuel yourself and then how you're doing to that. Let's take a look at how you're sleeping and what you might do to possibly shift and perhaps engage in a more healthy or better way
Yeah.
to ensure that, again, the bottom line is peak performance.
Yes.
How do you show up as a leader and perform at your peak? And then without taking care of the vessel that you live in, that's not
Yeah, that's
possible.
true.
Yeah, so we wanted to include those types of things too, more from a perspective of building habits,
Yeah.
more from a perspective of keeping integrity within your own self about the decisions you've made, and perhaps giving you some ideas about things to try and consider if there are some things, if that tends to be one of the areas where you could select some improvement.
I think you hit a really critical word in here, and that's integrity. So it's not just about deciding to do it and writing it down and committing to it, but doing that integrity. And that's why we have built in this reflection, every day, or a good portion of the book, there's reflections, right? And they're simple. They're just a little check mark. Have you done or did you not do it? And that is really critical because, I just know for me, like I was committing to eating healthier and realized I was not. So as I started working through the journal, I'm like, I'm not staying integrity with what I'm doing. So now I've committed to eating 6 cups of vegetables a day. 6 cups, like that's it. Like I cannot have a cookie unless I have 6 cups of vegetables a day. And that forces me to stay in integrity. And it's also cut down on the amount of cookies that I'm eating, right? Because it's not just, I'm so hungry. But there's simple things like that, but it makes a huge difference physically, psychologically, emotionally. When your body, as you and I both know, when your body is fueled correctly, oh man, you're clear thinking, you can handle things, you know what kind of decisions to make, you're comfortable with them. But if it's not fueled correctly, you're not at peak performance, not even close.
Right. And that goes into another area that we focus on too, and that's stress.
Yes.
So, when does stress become distress, and how do you acknowledge those things?
Yes.
And as a leader, not just in and for yourself, but in and for your team.
Yeah.
It's very easy to, pick up on cues and clues and maybe not follow them through because of the busyness of the day. And so, really, it's a holistic journal. We're
Yeah.
really looking at the whole person, body, mind, spirit, soul, every function. And what we choose tends to impact the output or the outcome. And we're all about peak performance.
Yeah. I think another thing that I would add on to this conversation is I'm listening to us really talk. I know we talk about this being for leaders and leaders of leaders. I really think that if you are an emerging leader, you'd want to learn these habits right now, right? Because these aren't typically not habits that you're taught about in college or your first job or even your first several years in your work environment, right? I mean, a lot of times when you think about executive coaching, that's when you start talking about wellness, right?
True.
Unless you're an organization that provides that information, and not all do that. But I would think as an emerging leader, this is a great tool for you to get these great habits, because this is about accelerating your impact. This is not about staying stagnant. This is about accelerating. And those who are driven to lead, they want to accelerate their impact. They want to be successful, and they want all the people around them to be successful. So I think what you're talking about, like, it's for a whole bunch of people. Absolutely.
So, what's an emerging leader? Let's kind of define that for our audience so that they know kind of where we're coming from with that.
Yeah. So that's a great question. An emerging leader is someone who is, they may have been in the work environment as an individual contributor and they've shown some leadership tendencies, and all of a sudden you're placed into this role where you're now leading and managing others, right? So you're typically put in a managerial position with some, leadership capabilities, but you're really now in this role of starting to grow as a leader. And an emerging leader, from an age perspective, maybe 26, 27 to 30 years old, coming out of college. But there's a little bit of experience there, but you're now viewed as the organization as someone who can lead in the future of the organization. And you have this drive within you that you want to take on that responsibility. So that's an emerging leader.
Yeah, and I want to also share that I'm working with an individual who's a business owner, and she has shared with me that this has been helpful in having her think differently about the way she engages with her partners, whether they be other individuals who do the same type of work she does, other individuals that she's managing through a project, other different pieces of her work. So I think that's another kind of segment we can look at too, is if you're leading and you have the desire to accelerate that leadership, this can be very helpful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.